All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling a big one.
Huge.
What is true freedom?
Yeah, it's a question that's fascinated people for, like, ever.
And we're exploring it with Timothy Keller's What is True Freedom?
It's a fascinating deep dive. Really makes you think about a concept we all think we understand.
It's from 95, but man, it's still so relevant.
Oh, absolutely.
And it starts with Keller talking about this quote from Pope John Paul II.
Okay.
He says, "The quest for freedom is a great dynamic of human history."
Interesting.
Kind of surprising to hear the Pope, right?
Yeah, usually thought of as being,
All about restrictions.
exactly, championing freedom. It's a really clever way to start the conversation.
It is, because Keller's acknowledging that we all crave freedom,
Right.
but he's going to challenge us on what it actually means.
Yeah, he wants us to see that true freedom might require a different way of thinking.
He even uses jazz as an example, which I thought was cool.
Oh, how so?
Well, we think of jazz as this, totally free-flowing music, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it's actually built on this really strict structure.
Totally.
And it's that tension between freedom and structure that he's really interested in.
Exactly. It's not one or the other. It's how they work together. But before he gets into all that, Keller spends some time unpacking this idea of absolute negative freedom.
ANF.
Yeah, ANF. Basically, it's this idea that true freedom is about being completely free from anything dictating your choices.
So no external authorities, especially like religion.
Right. Think about a time you just chased after something you wanted. Didn't think about the consequences, just went for it.
Right.
Did it really satisfy you? Or did you end up feeling kind of empty? That's the kind of freedom ANF promotes.
And to illustrate this, Keller brings in some big names. He talks about thinkers like Diderot, Nietzsche, Sartre, Huxley, all of them kind of wrestling with this idea that if you have God, you can't have true freedom.
It's a common thread, actually. And it gets really interesting because they weren't just talking about freedom from religious rules. They were grappling with this idea that if there is no God, then there's no ultimate meaning, no purpose. Yeah, and that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people because it leads to the idea that our choices, even if they feel free, might actually be predetermined, like we're just products of our biology and our environment.
So even those who are all about absolute freedom, they hit a wall with that idea.
You could say that. It's like chasing a mirage. The closer you get, the more you realize it was never really there.
So if absolute freedom, this idea of freedom from everything, actually leaves us feeling trapped, where do we go from there? What's the alternative?
Yeah, that's where Keller's argument really takes a turn. He doesn't just leave us hanging with this idea of absolute negative freedom falling apart.
Right.
He offers a whole different way to think about freedom.
Okay, I like where this is going. But first, let's dig into why he thinks this whole freedom from thing falls short.
Okay, so he lays out three main problems with it.
Hit me.
The first one is, the human heart.
Okay.
It's so complex, right?
We want a million different things all at the same time.
Exactly. So if we're really free to follow any desire, any whim, how do we actually choose between them?
It's like having a million paths in front of you, but no map.
Exactly. So it's not enough to just be free from external constraints. We need some kind of internal compass to actually navigate all those choices.
So we need some kind of guidance.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads to Keller's second point, which is the illusion of motivation.
Oh, interesting.
He says even when we feel like we're making totally free choices, we're always serving something.
Okay.
There's always this underlying value or belief or desire that's actually driving our decisions.
So even if you decide to totally chuck your job and travel the world, which feels super freeing,
Right.
It's still driven by this deeper desire for adventure or escape or whatever.
Exactly. You're still beholden to that desire for autonomy, for independence. It's not truly free in the absolute sense.
So Keller would say, even the choices that seem like total rebellion, there's still a reaction to something.
100%. We might think we're rejecting all constraints, but we're still defining ourselves in relation to those constraints. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. It's like even when you think you're breaking free, you're still bound by something.
Exactly. And this leads to Keller's third point, which I think is maybe the most mind-blowing.
Okay, lay it on me.
Think about a fish, right?
Okay.
It's this classic symbol of freedom swimming in the water.
Right. Totally free.
But here's the thing. That fish is only free because it's bound by the water.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
The very thing that constrains it, that creates the boundaries of its world, it's also the thing that gives it life.
It's like you need the structure to have the freedom.
That's exactly it.
So true freedom isn't about breaking free from all constraints.
It's about finding the right ones.
The ones that actually help us thrive.
Yeah, like finding the right framework.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, this is where Keller brings in this idea of a king.
A king.
Yeah, like a ruler.
You mean like a literal king? With a crown and everything?
Not necessarily a crown, no, but think about it.
Okay.
Myths, legends, even movies today.
We do love a good king story.
Right. We're drawn to these stories of kings.
I guess so.
And Keller says that points to this deep desire we all have.
For what?
For a righteous authority figure.
Someone to follow.
Someone worthy of our allegiance, yeah.
Someone who embodies, like, justice and wisdom.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that. But how does that play out in real life, though?
Right. We're not living in medieval times.
Right.
But that's the point, right?
Okay.
Keller's saying that without that ultimate righteous authority,
We try to find it somewhere.
we look for it in other places, yeah.
Like, well,
We elevate things.
like what kind of thing?
Success, for example.
Okay, yeah.
Romantic love.
Yeah.
Or even just being independent.
We turn them into our kings.
In a way, yeah. We hope these things will give us a sense of purpose.
We're looking for fulfillment.
Exactly. We chase after these lesser kings.
Thinking they hold the key to happiness.
And they never quite deliver, do they?
No, they don't.
They might offer fleeting moments of satisfaction.
But we're always left wanting more.
Always striving, never quite reaching that ultimate satisfaction.
So we end up enslaved by the very things we thought would free us.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It really is. So how do we break free from that cycle?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. If these lesser kings can't give us true freedom.
Where do we find it?
Exactly. Where do we go from here?
Well, this is where Keller's perspective, his faith, really comes into play.
Okay.
He believes that true freedom, lasting freedom,
Yeah.
it comes from surrendering to the ultimate king.
You mean Jesus?
Yes. And I know that might sound...
Oh, preachy.
Yeah, but before you write it off,
Okay.
let's be clear about what he means.
Okay. Yeah, because this isn't about forcing religion on anyone.
No, not at all.
It's not about political power or anything like that.
It's about something much deeper.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's about aligning yourself with a power that's bigger than yourself.
Okay.
Surrendering to a love that's not bound by all the things we usually chase after.
So it's freedom from some...
Yes. But not just freedom from rules or constraints.
Then what kind of freedom?
Freedom from those lesser kings we talked about.
The things we try to make into our kings.
Exactly. Freedom from that constant pressure to achieve, to acquire, to prove ourselves.
So true freedom comes from surrender.
It sounds radical, doesn't it?
It kind of does, but it also makes a weird kind of sense.
Right. What if true freedom isn't about being in control?
What if it's about letting go?
Letting go of that need to be our own kings.
And trusting in something bigger than ourselves.
And in that surrender, finding true peace, true fulfillment.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
It really is.
I think Keller's right. This idea of freedom, it's complicated.
It's way more than just doing whatever you want, that's for sure.
It's about finding the right kind of constraints.
The ones that actually set you free.
So after this deep dive
Into what true freedom really means.
I'm left wondering, what kings am I serving without even realizing it?
And how can I find the courage to let go?
To surrender to that deeper kind of freedom.
It's a journey, that's for sure.
And I think this conversation is a good first step.
Absolutely. Getting us to think differently about what it means to be truly free.
And that's what these deep dives are all about, right?
Challenging our assumptions, exploring new ideas.
And hopefully coming out the other side with a little more wisdom, a little more understanding.
And maybe a little more freedom along the way.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure, as always.